Please excuse my informality. I'm an old scrubber today, not least because I'm old and I've been scrubbing. I've been scrubbing the floors, and I have a plastic chair and a plastic furniture, more for putting things on when people bring dana to offer, and when I return from Pindapata, than my own use. But all these things require maintenance. They've been kindly offered. This is where donations are directed, in these basic, simple tools we use to live, including this accommodation. And it has to be respected, just as much as we have gratitude for that, taken care of in appreciation, to show that gratitude. And as you see, the sun is shining, which is quite rare at the moment. So today, although it is not the day before Uposatha, it is the day preceding that day. That day is when we ordinarily can wash our robes and such like. I've taken the opportunity, as the sun is shining, to do that today. Scrub my bathroom area and get everything aired out for the next onslaught of rain. Also, I hope it's not too bouncy. Now, I don't know whether you know what I mean by that. Somebody commented that when I'm this way round in the room, although there's the benefit of the change of scene, the focus goes in and out. I think that's if I move, because the camera's automatically working out the light situation, possibly. Something like that. Anyway, I should be trying to remain still as best as possible. These hand gestures, they're mudras in some schools of Buddhism and have a time and a place, but when generally talking, giving reflections on the Dharma, it shouldn't be necessary. So I should use that as a way of mindfully contemplating my bodily actions whilst speaking to you. So the first comment, or it's a question and a comment. As if on cue. The train goes by. And of course, I think people also nearby will be taking the same opportunity to do some cleaning and take advantage of the sun. The sun is a great purifier of things. Also, you can put things out and the sun gets rid of any potential mold and such like. Dear Bhante, there is a section from the Ordined Sutta which I do not understand and hope you would expound on that. Then this is the piece of the sutta. So firstly, I wouldn't expand on any of the suttas. They are the word of the Buddha. And so surely my knowledge is far less. It's minuscule by comparison. So I can only make comments as to what my understanding. And I think that's probably what you mean. You don't say expand, you mean expound, which I think, I'm not sure in this context, means talk about. And very happily talk about this. I'll read what the section is you're referring to, that you are quoting. I'm not sure from which translation this comes, but we'll just read it as it is. And further, the monk attends to the perception of light, determines on the perception of day, so that day
is like night. Night is like day. By means of an awareness thus open and unhampered, he develops a brightened mind. This basis for recollection, Lord, thus developed, thus pursued, leads to the gaining of knowledge and of vision. So this is a monk talking to the Buddha in this sutra as opposed to the Buddha. Now, it's good to read and to understand all of the suttas. The Sutta Pitaka is the content of the Tipitaka, the 3 volumes of Buddhist scriptures which contains the teachings of the Buddha, the word of the Buddha, the Dharma. So it is, of course, so very important, if we have the opportunity in our lives, to take some time and in our own language read these. It is to be understood, however, when reading these are in the translation form to our own language, in my case English, and therefore there are going to be a number of variations, whereas in the Pali canon, Pali words are used, and certain words in Pali, as you know very well from watching this channel, like dukkha, this simple word we translate as suffering, means a whole lot more than just that. So translations can vary, and one must always bear that in mind. It's important to know that, because unless we are fluent in Pali, we're never hearing the direct word of the Buddha, we're always hearing someone's translation. So to that end, I think it's important that we must always remember that there are 84,000 suttas. Now, at least 10,000 of those are directly the word of the Buddha. I'm not sure in this case that it is. I think it's of a disciple, a close disciple of the Buddha, which make up the other 70-odd thousand suttas in the Sutta Pitaka. But all of those suttas, all 84,000 of them, are teaching the same thing, the Dharma, which is actually, as the Buddha taught, quite simple. It is the 4 noble truths of suffering, a cause of suffering, an end of suffering, and a path leading to the end of suffering. And this path being our practice of Sila, Samadhi, Panya, the Noble Eightfold Path. Now, each and every one of these tens of thousands of suttas is talking and teaching that, and just that. But in each case, there are variations in accordance with the audience. So much like in many religious scriptures, and the only other I could compare it to would be the Bible, where Jesus is teaching much the same in terms of loving one's neighbour and kindness and morality to his disciples or students, the audience is different in many, many cases, in every case. So in the suttas, each sutta is directed to a different audience and therefore explained very differently in order for them to be able to understand. So if you're talking to a farmer, you will talk about using similes of perhaps planting seeds, nurturing seeds, growing and reaping fruit. Whereas if you're talking to a blacksmith or a metal worker, you would talk about, say, taking raw metals, putting them in a crucible, heating them up and purifying the metal to be able to work with finely malleable materials and create beautiful jewelry. You see, there are many ways to describe the same thing, and one chooses one's audience. I never quote from the suttas because I try to use just simple, practical similes that we come across in our lives in this day and age. And I'm not addressing a particular kind of audience, to my knowledge, like farmers or blacksmiths or fishermen. But in the time of the Buddha, this would be the case. It would be the townsfolks, the village folks, whomever he saw in front of him, he would adapt these teachings. So we must bear that in mind and not get too fixated when we read the suttas on the one we've just read and then spend all day analysing and trying to work it out. just know that what it's saying is going to come up again and again and again, another 83,000 times in fact, thereabouts, because it is repeated continuously in different ways, and this is why it's useful to read them, because it really does get the point home. So this, for example, the answer to your question, because you are then saying, please advise on what did the Buddha mean by attending to the perception of light, etc. When Bahir, the bark-clad ascetic, went to the Buddha in the morning, a bad time, whilst the Buddha was on alms round, Bahir was in a hurry to become enlightened. And the Buddha hadn't eaten, so he might not have been in such a hurry, but he wanted to go on Pindapata, alms round, collect his food, sit and eat, and then he would be teaching later on. Bahir, impatiently though, asking the Buddha for him to expound on the Dharma, use that word there, expound the Dharma, I think is the grammatically way to use it. He asked the Buddha if he would teach him the Dharma. This is just a quick version of that sutta. And the Buddha said, well, he's just going on alms round, perhaps he could return later. And in the time-old fashion of the suttas, Bahir, the ascetic-clad, the bark-clad ascetic, asked again, and in fact asked 3 times when the Buddha acquiesced. The Buddha acquiesced, he agreed to teach Bahir the Dharma. Bahir had been practicing ascetic practices. He was wearing just bark rather than proper clothes as part of his ascetic practices. There are people in India doing all of these weird and wonderful things even to this day. And at the time, this wasn't unusual. And he thought, well, I will teach this man the Dharma. Well, I'm not sure what the Buddha taught, but it reads in the sutta, he would teach this man some Dharma, then he could get on with his Pindapata, and Bahir could get on with what he was planning to do. Get enlightened was his idea. So he said, well, look, in the seeing there is seeing, in the hearing there is hearing, in the smelling there's smelling, tasting, touching, and so on. It's just that. So you see light with your eyes, that's seeing. You hear sound with your ears, it's hearing. You smell smells with your odours, with your nose, it's smelling. You taste tastes, flavours with your mouth, your tongue. This is tasting. And feeling is everything we come into contact with. It's just that. And the Buddha taught Bahir this. And then he could move on quickly. Having been asked 3 times, he had to do that, so he gave Bahir this teaching, whom was immediately enlightened and became an arahant, obviously due to parami he'd built up in former lives, but he was immediately enlightened on hearing this exposition of the Dharma from the Buddha himself. That just seeing is, well, it's just seeing, it's just that. Hearing, it's just that. Smelling, tasting, touching, it's just that. Very simple, isn't it? Very simple teaching, because he was in a hurry, it had to be done quickly. Whereas this more complicated version is of exactly the same teaching, that you attend to the perception of light. It determines perception of day, so that day is like night and night is like day. It's basically saying that there is light, whether it's night or it's day, and these two aren't intrinsically connected. We're still ultimately, whatever we are experiencing, whether it be night or day, we're still only receiving as through our contact and perception, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and then we're thinking. And as I explained with these khandhas yesterday, that all comes together as nama from the rupa senses, as nama, our mind's formation, mental formation, sankhara of, well, it's nighttime or it's daytime, but it's still just seeing with the eyes, feeling or experiencing light. So this was the same teaching again, but very quickly given and simply given, but sufficient for Bahir to become enlightened. Of course, then he would need to ordain. He had to ordain, so he went running off to go and obtain his bowl and his robes, because we have to go to our upachaya, our ordaining superior monk, with our bowl and with our 3 robes, and request ordination. So in order to do that, he went off to find a bowl and find his robes, and was promptly run over by a cow, as happens in India. And having attained to arahantship prior to this, I think, I'm not sure how the story finishes, would then have attained to parinibbana, or maybe he was reborn again in heavenly realms, I'm not sure. But as an arahant, presumably having been run over by a cow, he would have attained to parinibbana. But he didn't have the opportunity, of course, to fully renounce and ordain under the Buddha. So maybe, I think he came back for another lifetime, maybe for that purpose. I can't be sure that I can remember. But the point being, we read the suttas and we understand them, and when we don't fixate on one. Otherwise you could spend your whole time just analysing words. And after all, if you're reading, unless you're a Pali expert, a Pali scholar, have a fully fluent understanding of the Pali language, you're only reading someone else's translation anyway. So there is no point picking it to pieces. Just accept what you're reading as a rough idea. As my very rough version of the story of Bahir, if you've heard it before, you'll probably say, oh, that was not quite right, it didn't happen that way, it didn't, this is what happened. Of course, we all relate stories a little differently, don't we? And this is the same with translators, and also the same as how these stories were handed down in the very first instance, verbally. This is why I always say a very good way of getting to know the teachings of the Buddha and some of the suttas is through the chanting, because that's what they are. They're reflections on the practice, and they are versions, shortened, condensed versions of some of the suttas, the core suttas, the teachings, the Dharma, chanted, and would have been a way that they were handed down in the first place. So have remained the same, unchanged for many years. Of course they're in the Pali, but you can look at your own translations in your own language for a rough idea. But I reiterate, it's a rough idea. Get to know the key Pali words. We know dukkha, we know anicca, dukkha, anatta, we know sila, samadhi, panya. We're getting to know lobha, dosa, moha, greed, hatred and delusion, these kilesas, which are defilements. These key Pali words come up time and time again in the chanting. So you know when you're chanting, reflecting on those subjects, and it gives you a very good and pertinent reminder each and every time. So essentially the answer to that is in the Bahir Sutta. If you are fond of reading suttas, look up the Bahir Sutta. It's in the Sanyutta Nikaya somewhere, I think. Sanyutta Nikaya section. But just Google Bahir Sutta, B-A-H-I-R, and it will come up. It's the Buddha's way of teaching exactly that, that's in the which one did you quote? In the Ordained Sutta. It's exactly that, but in a more simple way, when he had a little less time to spend with the person in front of him. He would, of course, as the Buddha, have known that that was all that this individual required, and it didn't need expounding on further. It just meant he just had to remind Bahir, perhaps because he was going to bring up something from previous lives, that all seeing is seeing, and so on. Okay, so another one. I'm ready to renunciate. Oh, that's good. I do not want anything in life. I want to be free of all bondage. What is the way to heal my past and forgive myself? What is the starting point to become a monk? So the starting point to become a monk is, if you can find a monastery nearby or far away, wherever, go to it and ask for help, go in, spend time there. At first you'll just be able to visit, maybe not stay, so if you've got one nearby that helps. Eventually you can stay for a few days and then a bit longer, but I talk about it often, so there are videos on here. With some of these familiar questions, I will start having to say just, if you search on YouTube, English Buddhist Monk, how to become a monk, it's there. I'll do another one day, but at the moment that's it. I won't spend now 40 minutes going through the process, but I would say before you even do that, stop with all these ideas you already have, because when you do ordain, when you go and renounce properly, you renounce household life and you take dependence on a teacher in a monastery, your own ideas don't matter at all. You're going to have to forget all of those. So all of these, I do not want anything in life. I want to be free of all bondage. I want a way to heal my past, forgive myself. You're not going to get what you want. Firstly, you're going to have a lot given to you when you become a monk. You're going to have a lot of responsibility. You're going to have a lot of things and duties to look after and a lot of things to do. This doesn't mean you have to ordain and become a monk. You could remain in lay life and practice as you wish, as you think you should practice. But if you want to become a monk, a Buddhist monk, and an ordained bhikkhu, you're going to have to forget what you want and do what you are told. It's as simple as that. I'm not going to paint a pretty picture. You have to, for at least 5 years, do exactly as you're told to do by your teacher. And that could be all manner of things that you don't like doing and don't want. Bondage, you're going to be tied by the process of ordination. You take dependence on your teacher as he takes dependence on you. So you are bonded to him and to the Sangha, and more importantly to the Vinaya Pitaka, specifically the 227 Patimokkha rules, which protect your sila, protect your practice. As far as healing the past and forgive yourself, well, you can't change the past. So it can't be healed. Whatever you've done in the past is just that. Just forget about it, let it go. You're renouncing household life. You're giving all of that up. You're fully immersing yourself in just the practice. And that is to be free from these kilesas of greed, hatred and delusion, ultimately, and free from suffering in this lifetime. But to do that, you have to eradicate all these fetters and ties that reinforce, as I spoke of in the last talk with regards to khandhas, this view you have, this view of self, which is wrong view. There is no self. You are just a result of causes and conditions that you put in place. If you put in place the correct causes and conditions and go to a monastery and ordain, you will become a bhikkhu, a Buddhist monk. Just like the one next to you that's more senior, or the one the other side of you that may be more junior, you're all the same. You're brothers, and in the nun's case, sisters, in the Dharma. In a monastery, you're part of the Sangha. So what you've done in the past, it doesn't matter. You can forget about that. So this isn't, no one's going to give you some forgiveness, but you can. The way to forgive yourself is you make the determination to keep sila and never make that mistake again. Watch the video How to Become a Monk on here. I think there's a few actually, or Why I Became a Monk, but I often refer to aspects of that throughout all of these talks, my own process of ordination and where I'm at with that now. That's what this channel is about, me sharing my experience with you on a relatively more or less day-to-day basis throughout the years as I progress as a relatively new monk with my practice, having renounced household life previously, as you've are making or wanting, hoping to make the determination to do yourself. So I wish you, I was Anumodana, which is well done, super, sadhu, 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 and mutual joy for you having thought that way and having that decision, and fully encourage you to do so. If you have any specific questions about it or where to go, please email me, say where you're from, where you are now, and I might be able to help by pointing you in the right direction. I'm sorry, Bhante, since when you became a monk? 2020. You don't have to apologise, that's a good enough question. Bhante, do you sleep on the floor? And do you sleep in the lion's posture? What are your overall thoughts and experience around that? Can you do a small talk on how you sleep and manage postures? Okay, there's another video, how to sit and stand or something, how to sit in meditation, I think it's like that. Just look on the popular videos, sort them by views, and it's right there up at the top. That's the other postures, but as far as laying down, I don't use the laying down posture for meditation. I find it, I just tend to fall asleep if I do that, unless I'm ill and I'm not tired, then that would be the case, but that's rarely the case, so not since I've ordained anyway. But the lion's posture is, if you can imagine those reclining Buddhas, it's the Buddha lays on his right side, so his arms are straight down the side of him, so he's laying with one arm like this, with his head on this hand, and his legs are like that, so he's all very rigidly laying. This is called the lion's posture. This is the way one is supposed to lie as a monk when you sleep. But of course, when you fall asleep, you just move around, don't you? Not so much when you're sleeping on this hard floor. So do I sleep on the floor? Yes, I sleep on this floor. There is a grass mat which I sleep on, but it's just because this is concrete. It never gets that clean, however much scrubbing, so it's just to protect my robes, really. But I fold my robe lengthways in half, so it's like a shield from the flying insects and mosquitoes, like a sleeping bag. I make an envelope of my robe, just my single thickness normal G1, this robe, that is just enough. I don't use mosquito nets or anything like that, and I just sleep on the floor. My Sangati, my double thickness outer robe, the one we never really wear, just for formal occasions over our shoulder, I use as a pillow. And in the well, there's never an absence of that, because we mustn't be parted from that overnight. But if for some reason, well, there's never really a reason that's not there at night. But I was trying to keep it especially clean and tidy, because I had an event coming up the other day, so I didn't want to sleep on it. So then I just used an empty plastic water bottle, which actually makes a very good pillow, better than a brick or a book. I've used books in the past, but we don't have big puffy things. Now, there are practical reasons for this. I've got no bedding to worry about, no mattresses to air, no bedding or sheets or quilts or anything to wash, no pillows or anything, and consequently no bed bugs. And if you were living in this damp environment, you'd know that very quickly all of those things would be a very, you'd be all day. You'd never, my robes are never dry. Look, I'm all wet now, because yeah, even on this sunny day, it's a bit better. It's very humid. So if you had bedding, I just don't know how you'd manage. So my life is simple. I just live with my requisites, literally. I try to convey that so that you see that this is why I don't mind not being formally robed, because my robe is having gone on Pindapata this morning, it's very wet, so I'm taking advantage to get it properly dried out in the sun. Although what's underneath, I don't wear this underneath normally, this is just for walking around the monastery. It's called an anksa. This is an additional cloth. It's just a small piece of cloth we have around like this. This is all still a bit damp also. So postures, yeah, the other postures of how to sit in polite position, in lotus, half lotus, full lotus, they're all there somewhere about. Just put English Buddhist Monk sit, S-I-T, many should come up. But you can see anyway on all these videos, and this is how I'm sitting. And in the morning, if you watch the chanting videos live, you see the different postures that I go through then, and you see how I stand up. It's easier for you to see that. A picture paints 1,000 words or something like that. It's easier for you to see that than me explain it. How long have you been a monk? Well, that's again another question. So I ordained in 2020, so I don't even know what it is now. So I'm still a Navaka Bhikkhu, a new Bhikkhu, dependent on my teachers teacher and other teachers in India, my Sangha there. With their permission, I'm here, but still dependent on them. And everything I do, I have to request their permission. For instance, when I wish to stay here in the Vasa coming up, I'll require their permission to do so. Hopefully they won't say go elsewhere. All right, what about anxiety during meditation or just life as a layperson? Sometimes I feel gripped by terror of my mind, and my mind behaves like a wild beast, trapping me in the past or the future. Okay, so firstly, again, type in, search English Buddhist Monk anxiety. That'll get you many talks about anxiety specifically. But in your question, what about anxiety during meditation? If we have anxiety during our meditation, then we're not meditating correctly. Now, I don't know what you're doing, how you're meditating, but it's however you're doing it, if it's making you anxious, stop doing it that way, and just do nothing. Just sit and allow your body to just naturally settle and relax. Yes, don't force anything. With regards to your mind, that will, with time, and it may take several sessions of meditation, with time though, it will just naturally settle and become calm of its own accord. Don't force it. The only thing you can do is try and just keep your awareness, your consciousness, this vijnana consciousness, so your nama, your thinking brain, focus of attention, mind, on breathing only. Breathing in through your nose, breathing out through your nose. And then when you finish meditation, with regards to all of your daily life activities and this anxiety, continue with that. Whenever this feeling in the middle of your chest, the solar plexus area, arises of anxiety coming up, just breathe gently, no forced effort, no counting, none of this business, that's not necessary at all. Just very gently, normally breathe in through your nose, relaxing your face, breathing out through your nose, relaxing your face. Breathing in through your nose, relaxing your face. Breathing out through your nose, relaxing your face. I'm saying relaxing your face there because this is where all of our tension builds up. Around the eyes, cheeks, our teeth clench, our neck stiffens then and our shoulders get tight, our back. All the ailments and problems we have come to the surface through tension. They even used to have an advert in the long time ago in the UK. It was said, suffering from tense, nervous headache, like that. The man said, tense, nervous headache. Because of course you can get a headache. People get headaches from meditation. Through tension and being anxious or nervous, they give themselves a headache. Or just chill, relax, do nothing. This practice, the Buddha taught us how to be free from suffering. He taught us about suffering not to make us miserable and know there's suffering, but by knowing that there's a problem, we can be happy. Because, that's just suffering. That's just anicca, dukkha, anatta. There's nothing to worry about. Can't do anything about it. Just be happy. Everyone smile and be happy and relax your face and breathe through your nose. Isn't it nice? The sun is shining. I'm drying, sitting here. We can smile and be happy. And that's the practice. Not all this tense and analytical study of the Dharma. I went to see a man, he got very upset with me because I'm a monk and I don't know all of the suttas off by heart. And he said this because he quoted a sutta and he said it in a way I didn't understand what he was saying. So I didn't know what sutta he was referring to. But then when he said, well, if you don't know that sutta, you're not a proper monk, or something like that. Not quite so direct, but this is what he was insinuating. And I laughed and said, well, yeah, of course, that's the Kalama Sutta. I do know that sutta. But I said, yeah, I wasn't quoting, like I just said, I don't quote in suttas, I quote in real life and practice. When I talk about meditation, I don't bring up a sutta to show off my knowledge of the suttas in Pali and English. I rather refer to my own experience and bring it into your sphere of experience that you can tangibly see and experientially benefit from, and learn and be able to meditate yourself and get so much from meditation that you don't get from just, say, sutta study, which has its benefits, of course. But I'm referring and talking now about the practice. Not that. There are other people for that, other channels, other monks, other environments where one can just study the suttas. I'm talking about meditation. And then he got very angry and said, my meditation's perfect or fine or something like this. And I said, oh, okay. So I said, I'm thinking this conversation's not actually very useful for either you or for me or anyone here. So we could actually end it here, couldn't we? And he didn't mind that. But I felt very uncomfortable for quite some time afterwards. Now I can smile. But I did know the sutta he was referring to, because when he said the name of it, the accent didn't come across clearly, and he was quite old. So, there's a degree of misunderstanding on my part there. But I perhaps also didn't read the situation very well, and should have realized that I was talking to a Pali scholar, an academic, an intellectual, and my simple approach was going to not be for him. Now, whereas the Buddha and many other teachers, like perhaps you could use Jesus as an example, would immediately know, well, he's talking to fishermen or fishermen or farmers or blacksmiths, and he would gear his teaching towards them, as would the Buddha. We as mere mortals may not always automatically have that skill. And also, as a mere mortal and a relatively new monk, I'm not a teacher and having no training in that sense, as well as certainly not having those skills. I can really only teach in one way, and that is the way that I understand it myself, not profess to do something else. I'm never going to sit here and read suttas from a book. You can read them yourself. I'm never going to even quote from the books. And this was reading a comment just earlier. That's the first time I've read anything of such sutta content for so much on this channel. If you look through, I never do that, because they're there for people to read for themselves, aren't they? But there's also people who want to hear them, as I do. I listen to them myself, where there are very good monks, my teachers, who do sutta study classes, discussions and courses online, on channels, and personally I listen to those, because it gives me a way of, it's like reading the suttas, but you're able to listen to them, and also then there is some discussion about them afterwards, so you're expanding your knowledge. So there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't do that myself. I have my own way of doing things. So, have I answered that question? Are there good ways to deal with this? Yes, so that's what we've spoken about, so hopefully that's clear. But please, yes, look up those other English Buddhist monk, you just put that in, anxiety. Oh yes, that's the comment about the bouncy thing, so I've already talked about that. Is it normally to get tingling sensations in the hands or head, back of neck, etc. whilst meditating? Is it Kundalini energy? So there's nothing normal, there's no benchmark to meditating. The ultimate goal is for all bodily feelings, sensations, to not affect your mind. For you to know that this is just nama, rupa, so your perception of mind and mental formation, sankhara, of whether you like or dislike these feelings or not. As far as Kundalini energy is concerned, in the Buddhist practice, there's no such aspect of it. We don't talk about it. I don't have any knowledge of Kundalini practices, so whether or not it's that, I don't know. But I would suggest it is just, all I would suggest it is just that. It is tingling sensations in the hands or head or back of neck. Now I would call this just phenomena, feelings. Vedana is the kanda, the Pali word in the five khandas, Vedana, feelings, bodily feelings. We just generally call all feelings, and when we see lights or we hear sounds or we imagine things, this is phenomena, generally phenomena. Now all of this, you should just not focus on it, you should not give it any due attention or concern. It doesn't matter. Just let it be. Come back to the breath, your meditation object. If you have tingling in the hands, it's just tingling in the hands, just that. It will pass also. Nothing wrong with it. I would say, if anything, it's perhaps you are a little tense, and this is just the body showing you that you're a little tense, and you need to again stop trying so hard. You only need to be watching the breath. Now I don't know what kind of meditation you're doing, so without knowing that, I'm only I'm only referring to the type of meditation that I recommend, as I do myself, which is just watching the breath. When walking, I might use the simple Thai Forest tradition mantra of Bhutto, Bhutto, Bhutto. So this morning on Pindapata, there was a lot of things going on in my mind with regards to the surroundings and the weather and going on the Pindapata, as I'd missed it for a couple of days just recently, and this and that. So I thought, stop thinking and just go on Pindapata, and I brought my attention to the feet walking, which is quite easy. I have bare feet, and in the puddles, splish, splash, splosh, but I was saying Bhutto, Bhutto, Bhut, with the right foot, do with the left foot, and I really enjoyed Bhutto, 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 all the way through the village into Alutgama, the town, and then back again. I had to walk all the way. There was no tuk-tuk today, or the last few days actually, so I've been getting some extra exercise. And I've remembered how in Thailand we put our bowl when we're on the way and on the way back, because normally we go straight on Pindapata here. I'm collecting food from literally the house that's nearest, which is about 100, 200 yards away from me now. And so I'm there opening the bowl sort of under our robe, and the food goes in my bowl. And then walking all the way back like that, which isn't very comfortable actually, and it's quite difficult to manage. So it's really designed so you can receive the food. But then when you're walking back, so you can walk quickly, doing your Bhutto, 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 we have another way of holding it. And I remembered that this last couple of days, because I've not been going in the tuk-tuk coming back. I've been doing the full 9 kilometres or whatever it is, maybe 6 or 7 kilometres each day with my wounds. And having been told not to walk at all actually, but you can't do that, can you? At least I'm managing somehow with plastic bags to keep them dry. Anyway, Bhutto, Bhutto all the way back with my bowl hanging differently. It was much, much easier, and the sun was shining, and it was very, very, very good way of calming my mind. So when you're practicing your walking meditation, Bhutto, 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 or anything, anxiety even, Bhutto, 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 it does work so well. But it's better if you can, this breath, relax your face, because that's an instant quencher, thirst quencher, or anxiety soother. It's like a baby soother or comfort blanket. As you breathe in, relax your face, breathe out. It's so nice, it makes you feel good. Okay. Let me see if I can see what the time is. That will be enough for today, because the next question is rather long. I will say, please, with the comments, if I love to receive your comments and your questions, but if you make them too long, it's quite difficult. I can read them, and I do read them all, and I reply to them, but for me to then deal with them effectively, I don't have computers and all of this stuff, so I'm looking this on just a little phone screen. If the comment doesn't fit on the phone screen, this is what I'm trying to say, it's too long. I actually cannot see the whole question on like one as I'm looking at now question. It just fits on the screen. If it doesn't, then it gets put it does get put to the bottom of the pile, because I have to literally go through it, find the question, highlight it, do all sorts of things to try and get the question out, and there's a very good questions might get missed by my fault, but they might get missed if you put too much information either side. So just to bear that in mind. And the threads, what comes after, if I reply saying that I'll talk about it or I'll give you an answer, then there's no point replying to that, because that goes on to an indefinite degree. People get into, you can all comment and have conversations, as much as you like in that forum, if that's what people do, but I don't get involved in that, because I can only deal with the question, the first comment. So if you want to ask another question or say something else, make another new fresh comment. And the same goes for email threads. I'm not experienced in social media, so I don't know how I get very confused when sometimes an email comes up and I can't actually find the new email because it's got a lot of other ones in front of it, and I've got to go, will I have which one am I answering? Yeah, please keep life simple for you, and that keeps life simple for me, and then we all have happy, simple lives. I hope that's useful. There's something you can use. And if so, please use it and share it. And if not, just let it go. Don't let it trouble you. And until next time, be happy and stay well. Sukhi Hotu.